this and for all the patrons there. And I see Nancy Kaplan's there too. She's here in Michigan with me. I would have seen you this morning at the pool, except it was closed, but I just got the email that it's open tomorrow. So though we can go swimming tomorrow. But I've been really enjoying all of these series and all of the patrons. Thank you. This is such a great program, and I'm just really honored and really honored to be a part of it. So our theme this evening, I've been speaking in general, as you may know, about Jews and 20th century American culture, about in film and on television and in the world of music. And this really, I'm going to focus more specifically on Israel and Israelis in the American Jewish imagination, which is a subset of these larger themes that I've been talking about. And I'm going to be focusing mostly on film, but I'll give a couple of TV examples as well. Now, I want to start just for a minute talking about the present, because Israel and Israelis, that situation it's very much a part of the American Jewish life and American life. And so for a long time, it has been part of the world of movie and televisions. And I want to mention one very recent example. Last week, the show Law and Order, which is one of my favorite shows, full disclosure. One of my dogs is named Briscoe after Detective Lenny Briscoe. The Law and Order returned after a long hiatus, mainly due to the writers' strike. And it was the first episode they had aired since October 7th. And the episode, in case you didn't see it, dealt right on the situation and the war between Israel and Hamas, but especially how it's affecting Jews in America. So very briefly, I mean, it was an unusual episode of Law and Order in the sense that typically on Law and Order, if you know, there's a single homicide or a single event of homicide investigation and trial. This particular episode, there were 3 separate homicides. They really wanted to deal with the complexity of it. So the episode starts with the president of Hudson University is the fictitious name on Law and Order for Columbia University. It's because Columbia is on the Hudson River. And the president of Hudson University, who's Jewish, he's walking home one night and he's been under all kinds of pressure. And he's basically stabbed to death in front of some posters of hostages. And the assailant leaves the little sign that says traitor on his chest. So the investigation initially turns toward a disgruntled Jewish professor at Columbia who had been fired. Now he was very critical of the president for not speaking out on behalf of Israel. He turns out not to be the suspect, but then the investigation turns toward a pro-Palestinian group on campus that the president had basically shut down. I mean, this is ripped from the headlines. This is just what happened at Columbia University. But then they start to throw in some twists. So the head of this organization, or the most prominent member of this organization, is a young actress. On the show, her name is Chloe Esper, but she's clearly based on Bella Hadid, who's an outspoken supporter of Palestinians, and one of her parents, she's Palestinian American, and one of her parents is Palestinian. So and on her website, which has just millions of followers, she called the president of the university a traitor. So she's an obvious suspect. When they go to arrest her while she's making a public speech, she's shot to death by this angry Jewish professor. They hunt him down, and he pulls a gun and they shoot him too. So that's all in the beginning of the episode. But then, in one of those great Law and Order twists, the investigation of the original murder of the president turns to a young student who is not Palestinian, but who's very much influenced not only by this young actress leading the group, Chloe Esper, but also by the Palestinian faculty member who is really driving the group. He's arrested for that original homicide, and they get him to admit that he did it because this faculty member encouraged him to do it. And they put her on trial, which is the climax of the episode. And the way the episode ends, well, I mean, spoiler alert, should I not tell the ending? I won't tell the ending, but it's powerful. And what's very powerful about it is a show like Law and Order is able to deal with all of the complexities of this conflict and the way American Jews are dealing with it. Now, I mention it also because the whole relationship between American Jews and Israel, and especially Americans and Israel, is much more complicated now than it was in the past. And I would say older examples for many years, I would say at least until 1967, if not until 1987, there was a much more singular view and overwhelmingly positive view of Israel and Israelis in the American psyche. It's more recently, when things have gotten more complicated, where it leads to an episode like this. But for a long time, it was much more straightforward. And that's really what I want to focus on this evening. Some older movies that older American films that deal with the image of the state of Israel and the image of Israelis. By way of introduction, I want to mention, I want to mention a couple of basic Zionist ideas or basic Zionist themes that very much define the relationship, not only between American Jews and Israel, but in some ways even between Americans and Israel, and how these themes are reflected and we'll see how these themes are reflected in these movies. So the first is an idea that was articulated by Max Nordau. Now, Nordau, if you don't know, was sort of the right-hand man of Theodor Herzl. He was Herzl's successor as the leader of the movement. He agreed with everything about Zionism that Herzl said about the creation of a sovereign state. But Nordau was also one of the first Zionist thinkers to say that Zionism, in addition to creating a sovereign Jewish homeland where Jews can feel safe, Zionism must also include the transformation of Jews themselves. He wanted to create a new Jewish psyche, a new Jewish personality, and really Nordau believed that Jews need to become more physically robust, that there was the stereotypical Jew in the diaspora, Nordau believed, was either the yeshiva student or the bookkeeper, both of whom are more cerebral than physical. And while Nordau, he understood anti-Semitism largely as a non-Jewish problem and a reflection of the intolerance of non-Jewish society, he also, long story short, believed that one of the reasons Jews are targeted is because Jews are physically weak. You can, he said you can pick on a Jew who's not going to fight back. And he believed that Jews need to become not only physically more robust. This is why he was instrumental in setting up Jewish sports clubs. He's the one who conceived of the idea of the Maccabiah Games, but also morally more robust, having more confidence. A similar idea was expressed decades later by Alan Dershowitz in his book called Chutzpah. Jews in the diaspora need to have more chutzpah, stand up for themselves, not be afraid to ruffle feathers. And Nordau believed that was an important element of Zionism, and that's something that American Jews imbibed. American Jews became more willing to stand up in America given the existence of Zionism and especially the state of Israel, and also given the existence of this robust Israeli. The Israeli who's a soldier or a farmer and is suntan and physically strong. So that's one thing. The second one was an idea articulated by Achad Ha'am, which is the pen name of Asher Ginsburg. This is the one who invented secular Jewish culture. He came up with the idea that you can be Israeli without being religious, or you can have a full Jewish identity without being religious. But what's important for us here is Achad Ha'am, he had a very specific notion about the relationship between Israel and the diaspora. Because before Achad Ha'am, the prevailing attitude of Zionists, especially in the land of Israel, toward the diaspora was what was known as shlilat hagalut, the negation of the diaspora. In other words, there was this notion that once the state is created, the diaspora will disappear because all Jews will move there. Achad Ha'am said, probably not. The diaspora is going to continue to exist, and he was right about that. But he said that the Jewish state would, in his words, radiate cultural influence to the diaspora so that American Jews would be very much impacted by the image and outlook and mentality of Israelis, and that is absolutely the case. And the third one isn't so much associated with a person, but a moment. In the aftermath of the Holocaust, of the Shoah, there was a particular Zionist understanding of that event, beyond the suffering and the catastrophe, which is really embodied in the phrase Shoah ugevura, Holocaust and heroism. Zionists who were living in Palestine and then in the state of Israel, when they were most interested in the Holocaust, those instances when Jews actively resisted and defended themselves. You know, one of the first Holocaust memorials that was set up in Israel, aside from Yad Vashem, was called Lochamei HaGetaot, Kibbutz Lochamei HaGetaot, in honor of the ghetto fighters. That's what Zionists trying to create this new robust Jewish personality were most interested in. And that's also where we see the connection, where we see the earliest representation of Israelis and Israel in American film. Let me give you an early example. This is a film called The Juggler, starring Kirk Douglas. Now, Kirk Douglas plays a Holocaust survivor who was a juggler, and he was a juggler before the war. It's also one of the ways that helped him survive during the war and all the difficult situation there. He comes to Israel. He comes to Palestine and then to Israel after the war. This film was made in 1953. And while in Israel, he's coming to terms with partly the guilt of having survived, but also there's this fear that even though he survived, the forces of evil are still trying to pursue him. And he feels very alienated in his new home because he's surrounded by Israelis who haven't experienced it. And he feels like they don't understand it. But he befriends this boy his family has suffered loss during the War of Independence. And there's a kind of solidarity there where he actually finds a kind of kinship, and he uses his own experience to help the boy. So let's watch that first clip from The Juggler.
Suppose I kept asking you, why are you the way you are? Why's your mother? Why's your father? Why did
Please, stop.
That's my point. Why should I stop? You never do. Now, take your mother, for example, your father.
Stop it, please.
You never mention them, not once. Maybe they've done something.
Don't talk like that. They're dead.
Sorry, Josh.
They were killed in the war.
Yeah, sure, you know I never knew that. Look, if I knew that you... Everyone loses. Hey, Josh, I'll tell you a funny story. Look at me. Once there was a... I thought you were a Sabra, hard and tough. Hey, did you ever see a juggler? I mean a real one, a great one. Maybe a little out of practice. But in all Israel, there's none as great. Watch. Ha!
You're precisely magnificent.
So during the course of the movie, he helps the boy, but helping the boy also helps him come to terms with his past. What this movie is doing is linking the trauma of the Holocaust with the founding of the State of Israel, and the State of Israel as a kind of, it's an antidote or a helping with the healing for Jews who survived the war. Now that's an early example. That's 1953. When we get to the beginning of the 1960s, then we have really, I think, the most high-profile films about Israel in the American film library, one of which is Exodus and one of which is Cast a Giant Shadow. So let me say a couple words about Exodus, and we'll watch, and then Cast a Giant Shadow. Exodus, as you know, is based on the novel by Leon Uris. If you haven't seen the film, I'm sure you have, but read the novel too. What's amazing about it is the film came out in 1960. That's more than 60 years later. It has aged so well. It is still so timely. I mean, important characters in the book are Arabs in Israel, in Palestine, and then Israel, who are friendly with the Jews and work together. It's so much what we're seeing right now. It's just remarkable. But one of the film really has two parts, as you know. the first part, let's call it the Holocaust or the post-Holocaust part, and the second is building the Jewish state part. So in the first part of the book, you have a group of Holocaust survivors who had been living in displaced person camps after the war, who want to go to Palestine, and the British, in their infinite, I don't know, wisdom or cruelty or whatever, are still refusing them to allow it. What this film is capturing in 1960 is the sense of incredulity from the vantage point of 1960, that in the immediate aftermath of the Holocaust in Auschwitz, the British government was still not letting Jews in. That wasn't understood in its full historical context yet. It was just seen as British cruelty, and the British basically just being the quintessential examples of, let's call it genteel anti-Semitism, where they posture themselves as being civilized, but they're really not. So let's look at the first clip. But well, first let me say that the main character in Exodus, of course, is Ari Ben Canaan, played by none other than Paul Newman. And Paul Newman, at least according to the Adam Sandler song, Paul Newman is half Jewish. Goldie Hawn's half too. Put the two together, and that's one good-looking Jew. But Paul Newman, this is a role he was perfect for. He looks like Ari Ben Canaan. He acts like Ari Ben Canaan. But in this scene, he doesn't look conspicuously Jewish to this British officer, and he's going to have a little fun with that. So let's look at that clip.
Policy 2 years ago. Oh, I don't care about the Jews one way or the other. But they are troublemakers, aren't they?
Oh, no question about it, sir. You get two of them together. You've got a debate on your hands, and three, you're putting out a revolution.
Half of them are communists anyway.
Where's the other half? Pawnbrokers.
They look funny, too. I can spot one a mile away.
Do you mind looking into my eyes, sir? It feels like a cinder.
Certainly. You know, a lot of them try to hide under Gentile names. But one look at that face, you just know.
With a little experience, you can even smell them out.
I'm sorry, Bone, I can't find a thing.
Must have been my imagination, thanks.
Yeah, that's Paul Newman making fun of this anti-Semitic British guy. Now, he is the main character, along with Eva Marie Saint, who's his American love interest, and she's really representing the positive view of Americans toward Israel in its founding years. That's really what her character is representing. But there are other characters that are also very interesting. Two in particular, two young people. One is Dov Landau, played by Sal Mineo, the great underrated actors of all time. He was in the Fourth Planet of the Apes movie, but even though no one knows it because he had all that ape makeup on. But in this movie, Dov Landau, he's a Holocaust, he's a survivor of one of the death camps, who has this deep sense of anger and rage. And what he wants more than anything else is simply to take vengeance against people trying to hurt the Jews. And he reveals early on that what he wants to do when he gets to Palestine, he doesn't want to join the Haganah because he thinks they're too diplomatic, they're too passive. He wants to join the Irgun to allow him to start killing British people and any other enemies of the Jews right away. And now we also learn during the course of the movie that there's more to his rage, especially as he befriends a young Danish Jewish girl who, now this girl has a very different story. She didn't go to the death camp. She lived in Denmark, where her experience of the war and Nazi occupation is the Christian population of Denmark rescued the Jews, and she was rescued by a Christian family. So she has a much more hopeful and optimistic demeanor as she wants to go to Palestine, and she helps him deal with his pain. They're two young people really in love, dealing with his pain. And what he eventually reveals is that his rage is not only rage, there's a sense of guilt as well, because when he was in the death camp, he helped, because of his experience with demolition and explosives, he helped dispose of the bodies. So here's a scene where the two of them are talking when they're still, remember, in the early part of the movie is about this group of survivors who want to go to Palestine. They're on this boat. The British won't let them in, and the boat in the movie is called the USS Exodus, based on a real story. And eventually they have a hunger strike and they get in. Here's a moment where these two are getting to know each other. She's encountering all this anger from him, and she's trying to help him. So let's watch that clip. A little introduction here. Good, thanks, Sarah. That's a good place.
Whatever move you make, you were dead 10 minutes ago.
I ask for an opinion from Romania.
Do
Here
you
we go.
think the British will give in?
We'll give in first. These schlemiels. Maybe they think they've been hungry once in a while. They don't even begin to know what real starvation is.
Dov, if you hate these people so much, why do you want to go to Palestine with them?
Because their Jews fight instead of talk. When I get there, I'm going to join the Irgun. They know how to do it. I'm going to blow up every British installation I can find. I'm going to kill Englishmen. Kill and kill and kill them. Till there won't be any more, that's all.
The British aren't all bad, Dov.
They're rotten, the whole bunch of them. All the British, all the Russians, all the Poles, and all.
Not the Danes when I was
No,
there.
the Danes too, don't tell me.
That's not true. The Hansons were Christians and they adopted me.
One exception, one little exception. That proves something?
There are lots of exceptions. You just listen to me for a minute, Dov. When the Nazis marched into Denmark, they ordered every Jew to wear a yellow armband with the Star of David on it. And
That's
when
the
they...
worst thing that could happen to a Jew.
I said, listen. You don't know what you're talking about. And the next morning, when every Jew in Denmark had to wear his armband, King Christian came out of Amalienburg Palace for his morning ride. And do you know something? He wore the Star of David on his arm.
But why should...
And do you know something else? By afternoon, everybody was wearing Stars of David. The Jews and the Danes, and, well, just everybody.
Why they do that?
If you don't just know why they did it, Dov, well, maybe that's what's wrong with you.
So that, I mean, the love story between those two is an important part of the movie. Now, the movie ends with the state being founded, but there's an element of realism at the end of Exodus because, you know, to have a truly heroic movie, which this definitely is, it's the heroism of the founding of the state. You have to have some tragedy. And this girl is killed right before the state is founded, right before the War of Independence, along with an Arab neighbor who is working together with Ari ben Canaan. So there is this sad ending, but it really ends on a note of defiance, where it really ends with Ari ben Canaan. He's riding off to basically fight the War of Independence and to bring Israel into being. It's truly heroic. And that's really the image of Israel at this point, is a truly heroic state. Now, we see something similar in Cast a Giant Shadow. Cast a Giant Shadow from 1966. It's based on a true story of an American Jewish soldier, American Jewish Kern officer named Mickey Marcus, also played by Kirk Douglas, you know, appropriately, because the real Kirk Douglas was always an ardent supporter of the state of Israel. But Mickey Marcus was a decorated American Jewish officer during World War II. After the war, he returns to New York. He's adjusting back to civilian life, where he's recruited by a representative of the Zionist executive and the Haganah, basically to take over the Israeli forces in preparation of this War of Independence, because the Haganah, they have some training, you know, there were soldiers who were in the Palmach, they're a little bit, but they don't have good leadership, and they want Mickey Marcus to be the guy. Initially, he's reluctant. You know, the character Mickey Marcus and the way he's portrayed in this movie, there is this balance between, or there is this tension between his Americanness, where he feels his roots are in America, and his sense of solidarity and connection to this new state of Israel. And at first, he's very ambivalent about this connection. But as the movie moves on, he becomes more and more deeply connected. And he realizes two things. Mainly that it doesn't have to be an either or. He can be both a patriotic American and an ardent Zionist and defender of the state of Israel at the same time. So early on, when he's negotiating this tension between these two parts of his identity, he has an encounter when he comes back to America. And he comes back to America after this first recruitment visit. He's still a little bit uncertain. And he has an encounter at a party with his commanding officer in the American Army, who's played by none other than John Wayne. So let's watch that first clip from Cast a Giant Shadow.
It's a fine tan you have there, Colonel. Might I inquire where you got it?
Traveling, Mr. Ambassador.
Indeed. Any place that I'd be interested in?
I think you'd be interested in every place. Don't they say the sun never sets on the British Empire?
Not if we can help it. It doesn't.
Sometimes you can't help it.
At this time, Mr. Stone, I would think that your friends would realize that we're only trying to be helpful. A British military base in the Middle East is a necessity for the free world. And if they insist on our forces being withdrawn, your friends will be at the mercy of terrible, powerful enemies with legitimate claims on their territory and enough arms to overrun them within a few days. And they will find, possibly to their surprise, that they're alone and friendless in the practical political world. No nation is going to risk being the first to recognize so weak and controversial a government. They are, as the Bible says, a stiff-necked people. Perhaps you could persuade them that it's better to bend a little. Those necks are going to be saved at all.
What was that all about?
I got this medal because they don't trust Western Union. They want me to deliver a message. Listen, Mike, do you think the United States will ever recognize the U state when and if it's declared?
What the hell for? What's in it for us but trouble? Your friends may have the Bible in their favor, but the Arabs have the oil. You think our State Department's gonna hesitate choosing up sides?
I guess you're right.
They're already putting the pressure on your pals to postpone independence. It's a few years, a few centuries to those people. And I'm glad you finally got some sense. Pulled out before it was too late.
Now listen, Mike, you bigoted, ignorant... Look, I'll try to get through to you, but I don't think I can because you haven't the vaguest idea of what the stakes are over there. Now, here's a country surrounded by 5 Arab nations ready to shove them into the Mediterranean. No guns, no tanks, no friends, nothing. People fighting with their bare hands for a little piece of desert because it's the last place on this whole earth that they can go to and try to live in...
And why did you come back? Wouldn't they let you play captain?
You know me too damn well.
You don't know me at all. You don't give any of the rest of us credit for being human beings. I saw Dachau too, remember? If anybody ever deserved a home on the basis of sheer gallantry, those poor devils from those camps. And you have friends too, Mickey, although it'll probably upset you to find it out. And they'll ring every doorbell in Washington from the White House down, if it'll help. And I'll raise such a stink, they'll go in and out of the State Department with gas masks. But what about you? Are you too big to go back and help your own people unless they bow down and kiss your West Point ring?
Oh, Mike, get off my back.
Oh, what happened to that insubordinate SOB that jumped out of one of my planes over Normandy? Won the Distinguished Service Medal. Are you proud of that medal and ashamed you might win the Star of David? Stand up and be counted, Mickey. There's a lot of us who'll stand up with you. L'chaim.
Maybe you ought to stay off our side, Mike. Nobody will ever believe it. L'chaim.
You can stop there. Well, let's just pause and say how cool it is to hear John Wayne say L'chaim. I mean, that's what's great about that movie. But that is a powerful scene, which eventually lets him to go back and he fully immerses and he takes over. And he is Mickey Marcus in real life and in this movie is instrumental, is crucial in this fledgling Haganah able to win the War of Independence and for the state being able to come into being. Now, later in the movie, there's another scene where during the war, where it's becoming clear that it's going to be impossible for the state of Israel to hold, for Israeli forces to hold on to Jerusalem. And that's going to be a real serious matter of angst, of an anxiety and disappointment. But there's an exchange between Mickey Marcus and the other military leaders and political leaders as to what that means. So let's watch the next clip about the importance of Jerusalem in all of this.
Arab nations have crossed our borders from 4 different directions.
We have no tanks, no artillery, and almost no air force to stop them.
We're getting arms, soon. Somehow for 1 week, you must hold them.
Hold them? What are you talking about? Look, you've all got to stop thinking like losers. Attack! Attack! Surprise and bluff are your major weapons.
Attack tanks? With what, noodle soup?
Look, I've been working over that new shipment of Jeeps that just came in, and I've got a...
Jeeps with no anti-tank weapons.
Improvised. We're fixing them up with machine guns, armor plate, and there are 4 anti-aircraft guns in Tel Aviv nobody knows we have.
Yes, but how would you use them?
Well, we're mounting them horizontally on half-track so they can fire straight ahead.
In Jerusalem?
Jerusalem? Well, the city is almost isolated. You can't hold it.
We should evacuate everyone. It'll cost us 10 times as much to hold the city as it's worth.
How much is Jerusalem worth, Asher? What did it close at on Wall Street today? What's the market price of 100-foot frontage on Solomon's Temple?
Well, it won't be worth much when the desert's full of Egyptian tanks and you're wasting your arms trying to defend the impossible.
There'll be arms for the desert and arms for Jerusalem.
If you believe in miracles.
You came back, didn't you?
David, you and Stone will take the Jeeps into the Negev and see what can be done at night to stop the Egyptian tanks, Asher.
You and Ram will move your best Haganah and Palmach units to the road to Jerusalem. Find out what it'll take to break through to the city. You'll all report to me on what we have to do. Then Asher will explain to us why it cannot be done, and then we will do it.
I called you back from the desert because...
You can stop there. You can stop there, Ari. So what's striking here, of course, I mean, it is ultimately the miracle half happens because West Jerusalem is captured and becomes part of the state, but the rest of Jerusalem is not. And the reason any of that was possible was because it was the combination of Mickey Marcus's ingenuity and the resilience of the people he's fighting with. Now, in case you noticed, yes, that was Yul Brynner as the head of Haganah. It's worth watching the movie just for that, on top of everything else. But this movie also has a tragic ending based on the real story. After successfully waging the War of Independence and the state is created with, is able to withstand the invasion, Mickey Marcus is killed by friendly fire. And the movie has a tragic end, and he is honored as one of Israel's early heroes, really heroic figures. But like the movie Exodus, the presentation of Israel and Israeli heroes, it's pure heroism. There's no ambivalence here. Israel is a fledgling country, really trying to survive. Now, Israel's heroic nature, I'd say it carries all the way through the 80s, but it gets a little bit more complicated as Israel is no longer a fledgling state and becomes a more stable and powerful state, as we know. And one of the first films that's going to capture this, let's call it a complexity, greater complexity, is going to be the movie Sword of Gideon. Now, Sword of Gideon is based on an Israeli operation that took place in the aftermath of the Munich Olympics. It was a mission suggested by Golda Meir and Israeli intelligence, where Israeli Mossad operatives would track down the assailants, the terrorists who killed the Israeli athletes, and hunt them down and kill them. Now, in some ways, it's clear that it was necessary. It's clear that these people need to be brought to justice and even eliminated for their crimes. But throughout the movie, there's a kind of, I don't know, moral ambivalence. I mean, there's no reluctance to do it, But what really comes out in this movie, and I think this is something fairly accurate, is that the state of Israel, as a Jewish state, as an Israeli state, as a moral state, you have to do things sometimes, but it ruffles your ability, or it's at odds with your larger moral aims, but still necessary. Now, early in the film, in sort of Gideon, one of the individuals who's recruited to take on this mission, he has an encounter with Golda Meir, and she has a monologue in this film which is explaining, despite all the moral problems, why it is 100% necessary for Israel to undertake this mission. So let's watch that clip from Sword of Gideon.
Jews. Who are we? For 2,000 years, we have been born with a faith and a hope. But you, Avner, were born with something else. You were born here. You can say to the world, I am a Jew, and also this is my home. We have a homeland again, a Jewish state, the state of Israel. It exists to protect us from our enemies and to provide us with a haven in this world where we can live in peace. But they will not let us live in peace. Once again, they are killing and terrorizing Jews all over the world. Innocent people, even children, in planes, on buses, in schools, in Athens, and Zurich, and Tel Aviv. And now, in Munich. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is playing volleyball and winning medals. So we are alone, as we have always been. Since no one will defend us, we must defend ourselves. Maybe these terrorists will not let us live in peace, but I promise you that Israel will chop off the hands of those who cut short the lives of our children. This terrorism, all terrorism, must be stopped. And this is why you are here. I have decided to strike back. We have been reluctant to change policy, but the guilty must not go unpunished. This is my decision and my responsibility. We will meet force with force.
You can stop there, Ari. So the heroic nature, even in this difficult situation, it's still there. What a great speech by Golda. Incidentally, there's a brand new biography of Golda by Deborah Lipstadt, which is totally worth checking out. This movie was made in 1986. So this movie is before the beginning of the First Intifada. It's really before, even though the conflict with the Palestinians really begins in 1967 after the Six-Day War, it's only after the First Intifada where it really becomes more central or more in the foreground of the American imagination and in the foreground of the American cultural and the film imagination. And so when this film is remade by Steven Spielberg in 2005, film called Munich, the same story is retold. In this version, there's a much deeper sense of uncertainty by the same group of operatives. In other words, in this, Sword of Gideon is a very good movie, but a little bit, it didn't delve into the personal angst of the operatives who actually had to go out and kill people and deal with the collateral damage. In other words, not only killing the terrorists, but the people around them in some cases as well. The Munich is going to deal with greater ambiguity, although not questioning the necessity of the mission. And the final scene of Munich, in this case, the main operative is played by Eric Banya. In this final scene, you see he's torn. He's done it. He's accomplished the mission. He's eliminated these terrorists, but he's uncertain if what he does, if what he has done was the best thing to do. Is it morally acceptable? He's having a kind of crisis of morality. So in this final scene, his handler, his senior officer, played by Jeffrey Rush, is basically telling him, "You're done, come back to Israel," and he's not sure if he can. In other words, he ends, the mission is complete, the mission is successful, but the operative himself, it winds up with a sense of alienation. He's simply uncertain. So we're going to skip one clip, Ari, and go straight to the clip from Munich, the ending scene from Munich.
Anything at all? Every man we kill has been replaced by worse.
Why cut my fingernails? They'll grow back.
Did we kill to replace the terrorist leadership or the Palestinian leadership? You tell me what we've done.
You killed them for the sake of a country you now choose to abandon. The country your mother and father built, that you were born into. You killed them for Munich, for the future, for peace.
There's no peace at the end of this, no matter what you believe. You know this is true.
Here's what I know. Your father is sick, your mother will be alone. You're a Sabra, your wife and daughter are Sabras. What I came to say is this. Come home.
Come to my house for dinner tonight. Come on, you're a Jew, you're a stranger, it's written someplace or other that I'm meant to ask you to come and break bread with me. So, break bread with me, Ephraim.
No.
That's how the movie ends. There's a kind of uncertainty, or there's at least a lack of the kind of certainty there had been earlier on. The situation is more complicated. Now, and that sense of certainty lingered on for years. It didn't really compromise the resilience of Israelis, but the whole issue, seen through the lens of the conflict with the Palestinians, is just more complicated. And that's what this later film is showing. Although, keep in mind, the mission is the same and the outcome is the same. And there's really no point in this movie where anyone says we shouldn't be doing this. Everyone recognizes the necessity. There's just the kind of a little bit of moral the ambivalence and the uncertainty. And ultimately, he has to walk away from Israel. He feels lost at the end as opposed to fulfilled at the end. Now, eventually, the American sense of what Israel is about becomes mainstream enough that Israelis are incorporated into American films, not as the actual story, but just kind of often in the background. And I think that speaks a lot. When you have a film with an Israeli character, it's a reflection of a greater understanding and knowledge, especially when you have action films or films that are military or whatever. There's a recurring theme where you'll have someone from Israel whose abilities, whose necessary abilities to help whatever is going on is identified by the fact that this person was in the Mossad. After a certain point, Mossad in American films becomes a way of saying the most effective intelligence operative in the world, skilled beyond anybody else. And yeah, you can see this in actual shows about actual espionage. But even the example I want to give is there's a franchise of movies called the Fast and the Furious movies. You know, a lot of exploding, a lot of car races. I love them all. And a character is introduced whose name is Giselle. And Giselle, I mean, it's basically about a group of people who steal cars, and they're really good drivers, and they're really good at, well, basically everything. They're just these heroic, I would call them these anti-heroic types, where they're robbing, but they're doing it for a good cause, and they're not the real bad people in the movie. But earlier on, we're introduced to who Giselle is and why she's so good at all of these things, including subduing bad guys. And just so you know, Giselle, this is the breakout movie role for none other than Gal Gadot. This is who Gal Gadot was before she was Wonder Woman. So let's play this clip from Fast and the Furious.
On. You're up.
Sure. Nothing like the easy stuff.
Let's go. I'll drive.
3 da madruga, insônia não me ajuda. Saio sobre os olhos da vizinha pescoçuda. Tô na rua, sozinho no volante. Meu semblante tá sinistro, bem melhor do que antes. Solto a embreagem, vou que vou, tô na estrada. Peço proteção pra me livrar.
I make 6 bodyguards.
7. You think that guy with a fanny pack is a tourist?
So how long were you in the army? The gun you pulled the other day was a Jericho 941. If I'm wrecking the slide, that was straight up Mossad.
I got out of the military probably at the same time you quit smoking. The amount of chips you eat, the way you always have to keep your hands and mouth busy, you were a 2-pack a day man for sure.
Stop there, Ari.
Unfiltered.
I just wanted you to see it. I mean, basically, he says, you're so awesome at this, straight up Mossad, which is a way of saying you are better at this than any of us and anybody else. That's what Mossad has come to mean in American films. Now, the mainstreaming of Israel and this greater awareness of Israel is also reflected in the fact that Israel is presented not only in more dramatic shows and action movies, but also comedically as well. So let me give you a couple of television examples here. We'll see how the time goes. One is an episode of The Simpsons. There's an episode of The Simpsons where the Simpsons basically it's a Christian trip to Israel. It's a Christian pilgrimage to Israel. But when they get there, they encounter the Israeli tour guide. And this is a caricature of an Israeli tour guide who, if you think of your first time going to Israel, the first time you had an Israeli tour guide, tell me it isn't this guy whose name is Jacob. The voice, well, let's listen to the clip and see if you can recognize the voice. Go ahead.
Welcome. Hey, my name is Jacob. You may notice I speak the English with a slight accent. This is because, as you probably guessed, I used to live in London. And that is why I sound like Hugh Grant. Come on, let's go. We got a lot of holy sites to see. Yalla! We finish early, we go to jewelry store owned by my cousin. No joke, it's true. Great prices. You got to haggle, otherwise they don't respect you. Come on, let's go.
Do you have any safety tips?
What are you talking about? Israel is the safest country in the world. The only danger here is dehydration. Drink water, don't die. It looks bad on me. Come on, shut your face, let's go.
But it says here in the brochure...
Brochure? 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 Who wrote your brochure? The same schmuck who wrote the New Testament? I can't talk to you. You talk to my niece, Dorit. Dorit! Talk to the stupids.
Shalom, Goyim. Shalom to you. Shalom is the aloha of this place.
Okay, lady, you done talking now? Who is licensed tour guide here, you or me? Now, everybody, we have no time to see Matzada. Everybody died there for nothing. Okay, first stop, Old City. Come on, let's go. Please, shut your face.
Okay, we can stop there.
Okay,
Yes, that was Sacha Baron Cohen. Who else could possibly play that? And incidentally, the number of times he tells the script to shut your face is, it's comedy. It's parodying. I think it's a very good parody of it. I want to give one last example. And this is really the first comedic attempt to deal with the tension between Israel and Palestinians and how it reflects in a place like Los Angeles. And this is from the show Curb Your Enthusiasm. This is the I would call it the well-known Palestinian chicken episode. Basically, the storyline is, or one of the storylines is, there is this new Palestinian chicken place that opened up, which is everybody loves. It's everybody loves it. And before I watch the clip, I want to suggest a theory here. Since you're all from, many of you are from California, is I wasn't sure exactly where they got the idea for the Palestinian chicken, but my wife and I were in San Jose last year, and we stopped at this sandwich place called Ike's Sandwiches. There's also one in Culver City. A lot of celebrities go there. Wow, it is so good. It is so good. And when I Googled it, it turns out that Ike is Palestinian. So I had this notion that maybe the Palestinian chicken episode we're about to watch this clip from is based on Ike's chicken. I mean, you go in the store, there are all these celebrity sandwiches. You know, there's the Kobe Bryant, you know, blessed memory. There's the Reading Rainbow. You know, there's many like that. The Pee Wee Herman. Anyway, in this first one, they're gonna go have chicken here, and a friend of Larry David's is going to show up with a kippah on to make a statement. And well, let's watch what happens.
We talked him into coming here.
He's gonna love it. He's gonna love it.
Shalom. You know, I thought all last night, if Rabin can break bread with Arafat, I can have chicken at this anti-Semitic shithole.
Okay, that's just not gonna work.
Yeah, that's no good.
What's not gonna work?
The yarmulke.
Yeah.
I can't go in with wearing this yarmulke?
You're just shoving it in their faces.
Let's go in.
No. It's far too cocky a move.
What is this, the raid on Entebbe? Let's just kind of walk in casually.
What? Proud Jews wear yarmulkes?
Yeah, be proud here in the parking lot. You don't need to be proud in there.
Let's just go in and sit down.
Take it off, take it off.
I'm not doing
Take
anything.
it off.
Don't you
Huh?
dare go
Come
after
on,
my
take-
yarmulke.
take-
Don't
take-
you reach for that. Don't you ever touch that. No, don't ever grab my yarmulke. Give it to me. Don't ever grab my yarmulke, ever. How dare you? Don't ever touch my yarmulke. Do you understand?
What the hell is that? We're gonna go eat without you.
Good, who needs you? Get out of here. Hey, thank you. Oh, well, hello.
You're a Jew, yes?
Yes, I am a Jew. A big Jew.
Big Jew, and you still told him to take off his Jew cap.
Yes, I did.
Thank you, my friend. What's your name?
Labe,
Labe,
son of Nat.
son of Nat.
My friends call me Larry.
I like you.
What's not to like?
Ah, you're a Jew. My name is Shara.
Shara.
Call me.
Let's get some chicken.
Now the comedic twist toward the end of this.
With your gal down the hall.
Now the comedic twist toward the end of this episode is, for another reason, Larry has to go meet with a local rabbi, and he's eating the Palestinian chicken from Al Abbas while he's going to meet with her. And first she's not interested in it, but she's also heard how good it is. And eventually, well, let's watch what happens. This is how good this Palestinian chicken is. Let's play that last clip.
Can I have the Weinstein file?
Oh, I'll get it for you. And Larry David's here.
Come on in.
Oh, well, I came a little early. I was going to finish my lunch.
Well, that's all right. You can finish in my office.
Okay.
Is that Alabas chicken?
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
That looks delicious.
Yeah, you don't mind? Sure you don't mind?
No.
Huh?
No, finish your lunch.
You know, I know we have our problems with these people, but man, oh man, they know what they're doing, chicken-wise.
Well, keep that away from me no matter what.
Okay.
Give it to me!
Said, no matter what,
Give me
Rabbi.
that! Give me that!
No, let go!
Okay.
going on with?
Yeah, you can turn it. You can turn it now. So what we have is we've gone from a situation where early on the American understanding of Israel is very straightforward. It's very heroic. But as it becomes more complicated, more complex, the complexities are dealt with in these films. But also, there's enough familiarity with Israel that you can even present even a hot issue like this, the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, in a way which is actually funny. And incidentally, I could have just easily shown a clip from the Adam Sandler movie, You Don't Mess with the Zohan, which also has this strange kind of rapprochement between Israelis and Palestinians in New York. One of the messages, I think, that one of the subtexts, even though it's just comedic, but both comedic, is that away from the conflict, that they can coexist. No one's trying to say there. I'll just end with one last comment, is that the most recent impact of, or the most recent, addition to all of this is, thanks to streaming, Israeli shows have become more accessible to an American audience. And so you have Israeli comedy shows like Eretz Nehederet, which means beautiful country, which is basically Israeli Saturday Night Live, which is viewed by more Americans, especially American Jews. And you have more serious drama shows, especially Fauda, which is about a unit in the Israeli army that infiltrates the West Bank and Palestinian society. And now you have the show Tehran, which is about Israeli operatives, Mossad, infiltrating in Iran. And of course, there's Shtisel, which is really bringing the whole Orthodox world. These are more recent additions, recent shows, but the presence of Israel, Israelis in American film continues to expand and continues to grow. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this special program. Hope you all enjoyed it. I will share links. If I can find, everybody wants to watch this Law and Order episode, so I don't know if I can probably find it online. I'll share.
It's brand new. I think it streams on Peacock.
Okay.
That's the NBC streaming. But yeah, it's definitely worth watching. It's powerful.
So just a question or two. I got a comment here saying, well, this particular person said, have we gone from pride in Israel to disrespect in Israel? Or were you arguing more we've gone from a pride, the earlier films, because Israel was just the underdog, and now Israel is no longer the underdog. So the films that we're seeing now and the references, is it disrespect for Israel, or is it more that it's open to criticism, to humor?
I think the way to put it is, I think early on, it's a more, I don't want to say, it's a more simple or straightforward respect and veneration of the heroism. And now I wouldn't call it disrespect. I would call it realism. As there's greater familiarity, there's greater understanding of, there's a lot of complexity here, because Israelis themselves are aware of more complexity. I mean, Fauda is not making out all the Palestinians to be evil. Fauda is showing the gradations in Palestinian society and what it means for Israelis and this whole relationship. So I think the real change is from something that's more straightforward to something that's more complex. But I really have yet to see something which is disrespectful or derogatory or, pejorative presentation of Israel. I have not seen yet coming out of Hollywood and TV. And that's not to say that it's not going to, because there are films produced elsewhere which are more pejorative of Israel. But the films produced by American filmmakers, there's still a sense, I think, even with everything that's happened, and even if the government's become a little bit more in a more illiberal direction, that the values of the state of Israel and the challenges of the state of Israel are still compatible, and they're still compatible and similar in certain ways to what Americans deal with. There's still a lot of similarities there. So I think the real direction is just complexity and realism.
Maybe I would add too that I think the critique of Israel, the complexity of Israel, that's coming out of Israel, not America.
Absolutely, yes. The real complexity is something that Israelis are teaching Americans about. I think that's a very good way to put it.
Okay, everybody. We're a little out of time because it's late, so I wanted to just take a moment to thank you all again for supporting CSP and for being part of our legacy circle. I wish you all a healthy evening. I'm going to go pick up my children, so I have to run. We'll see you tomorrow maybe, because we have another program tomorrow. Many more coming up with Howard Lupovitch from his frozen tundra of the Detroit metropolitan area. So thank you. It's nice to see all of you. I see people from New York and California and maybe everywhere in between. Keep safe, keep warm, keep healthy, and lots of movies to see. If you haven't seen these movies or shows, you know what you can do after when I hang up, right? Go look them up, but I'll send you links as well. Yana, it's always happy to see you. Okay. Bye, Louise. And if you have any good stores in Lower East Side that Howard and his wife should go check out, please email him because he has no understanding of the culinary history of the Lower East Side. Upper West Side, maybe. He likes the bagels up there. Lower East Side, not so much.
I know Mocha Burger. Mocha Burger's in Soho. That's downtown.
Yeah, I don't know.
Mhm.
We'll
Okay.
get you. We'll send you stuff.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.